What's up, guys? Dr. Uz here from the Dr. Uz Talks YouTube channel, and I wanted to talk to you today about HMOs. First, thanks to everybody who's just liked and subscribed to the videos. And HMOs, man, it's one of these things that is really, I'm really passionate about hating on, and you're probably thinking, why, man? What's the problem with HMOs, right? But one of the things that I really noticed that is going on recently in this country is a lot of people, they like to complain about certain things. They like to complain about the way that their communities are now, the fact that nobody talks to each other, or the fact that everybody's spread apart and nobody looks after each other or anything like that. And obviously the first thing that they look to blame is immigration. And of course, immigration is a major factor in a lot of these things. But one of the things that a lot of people miss out on is all of these other kind of factors that really compound the problem, and just get away scot-free with just doing what they're doing, and acting as if they're doing some kind of favor to everybody, when actually they're causing huge detriments to each other. And I made the mistake a few weeks back of basically, your phone spy on you and all that kind of stuff, right? So I made the mistake basically of going on Instagram and stuff like that. And, in my reel, there were just loads of like property things. And this one guy was bragging about how, he's made this HMO and how much money he's made off this and blah, blah. Absolutely nothing about how the residents are like, or how it improved the community or anything, just how much money he's made, because that's all that matters nowadays, right? How much money you get in the bank. Who gives a crap about who you screw over? So I just put a message on there. It's like, okay, it's good that you're making money, but HMOs are the best way to destroy a community. Obviously this guy didn't like that, and maybe I could have put it in a bit more subtle way, and started to respond with personal attacks. And this is always a surefire way that that somebody has absolutely failed in any of their arguments, that they respond to you in a with personal attacks there, talking about my job and the fact that I don't, what have I done to help anybody in the community. Absolutely bizarre kind of comments. But this is the problem with people who do things like HMOs. If you go and say, for example, you're on a dentist page and you started to criticize them about dentistry or something and say, oh, dentists are all money grabbing and whatever, there wouldn't be, because I don't mean to put us in a higher light or whatever, but because we're professionals, nobody would really respond with like, oh yeah, I don't like your nose, mate, or I don't like your face, or oh yeah, what have you done? Oh, you ain't done nothing. Like it's just, it's completely unprofessional and pathetic, and it shows the kind of quality of people who get into this kind of nonsense. But anyway, enough of a rant about that. Let's talk about the HMOs themselves, right? So HMOs, for people who don't know, is a house of multiple occupancy. And it's basically where what happens is that some property developer person basically goes and buys a house, dilapidated usually. They don't give a crap about what area it is in or anything like that, right? And what they do is they're like, right, okay, well, if I put one person in it, that one person is going to make me a certain amount of money. But then if I go and if I go to another property, for example, right, and then I basically go and split it into like 4 or 5 rooms, and I rent out each room individually, I'm gonna make a much higher rent than I would do if I was basically going and renting it to one person there, right? So this is now like a big business thing that is like, okay, buy a property, split it up, rent each room, okay? And this used to be restricted to like students. So when I was a student, I used to live in a HMO. I used to live with my friends. It wasn't really a HMO. One of my friends owned the house, and basically his dad owned the house, sorry, and basically then rented rooms out to us. And it was fine because it was in a place right next to the university. It was kind of expected, right, to be like that. But none of us saw that as our like end game. Like, yeah, we're going to be living in this HMO forever. This is what I want to do. I want to live in a HMO with all of my friends, right? Nobody wants to live like that. And this is the essential problem with HMOs, that in a HMO, people are only drawn into that due to circumstance. They're basically either can't afford rent on their own in the areas that they want, or they're drawn into it because of the fact that you know, they're in the circumstance of like, I'm living with students or something like that, right? Or they're a transit worker in the area. Say, for example, they come there for work, for like seasonal work, or like a few months of the year, whatever. It's like, I don't mind living like that. But nobody wants to live like that for a long period of time, right? And that is the thing that causes the problem. Because when you have somebody who doesn't want to live in a particular area, or is using an area as a means to an end, those people are never going to set roots in that area. They don't give a stuff about what their house looks like in comparison to other people. They don't give a crap about about being like, oh, let me join this club, let me get my kids enrolled. They don't usually have kids to enroll themselves into different things. They're not really bothered about being part of that community, right? And that's okay if you got one, right, or two in a street. But now what's happening is, because you've got these idiotic developers who don't give a stuff, they're just popping up HMOs anywhere. So you might have a residential street that has been established for a very long time near a school or something like that. Or you have a quiet residential street there where basically you can see that, you know, people take care of their area, like nice and clean, you know, do their own, you know, make their hedges nice. You see people on a weekend, they're out there doing their gardening or doing whatever, and they're in their little, however small the house is, you know, like even like a 2 up, 2 down or whatever, right? And they're doing all of that, and they're really concerned about that. But then you open up a HMO in the area, right? Straight away, there's like 5-6 bins outside, right? Because you've got to cater for every single room, right? So you basically got multiple people there. You then accumulate a whole load more rubbish than you would do there otherwise. Those people do not give a stuff about, you know, oh, does my hedge look nice? Does this look great for the neighbors? Should I go down and join, you know, the local football club or do this or whatever? They're usually there for a short period of time, so they don't give a stuff about staying there for long periods. But then the second thing is that not only are they there for a short period of time, but also their whole essence is to get out of there as quickly as possible, right? So I used to live in a very small house, right? That was like the first house that I bought. And it was, you know, it was like my pride, right? Of basically living in this small house. I bought it myself. It's like I wanted it to look nice. You know, even like the door was horrible, and like the garden looked terrible outside. And I do little things like, you know, putting out a bit of gravel outside. When I look back at it, it's like, oh, it's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit sad or whatever. But I wanted it to look nice because it was like mine. And I didn't have any intention of leaving for quite a long time because I had a long contract in one of these other places. But obviously, like, you know, 7-8 years later, I got married and stuff and sold the house and things. But because it was me in a residential area, like, you know, I wanted everything to look great. And I basically ended up knowing all of the people around there. I knew, like, you know, the local kind of you know, corner shop people, and the people down the takeaway, and the people down you know, the local shops and all that kind of stuff there. And you get to know your neighbors because you see them over the fence and all that kind of stuff. It would be very different if there was 3 or 4 of us living in that same house and we were literally there doing shift work and coming back late at night and just being like, you know, whatever. And this is the way that you destroy a community, right? You know, if you get people who are looking at properties in a particular area, and they're looking at like places to do up and things like that, right? The first thing they look at is they look at other houses in the street and think, okay, is there a row of flats here? Is there a HMO down here? Whatever. Because the HMO will destroy your street, right? Because it not only is it always going to look bad, not through any fault of their own or the people who live there, right? But basically it has to by design, because you have a load of bins on the outside, and basically those people are never going to take care of their property. But also as well, you don't know from year to year who's going to be living there, right? And that's always a problem. This is the thing that I always find hilarious, that people are just like, they always moan about immigration. Oh, you don't know who you're letting in the country, mate. Yeah, but what about HMOs? You don't know who's in your street like week to week, right? You're more than happy to let some idiot property developer who acts like he's a next level dude on Instagram and stuff like that to make a HMO in the street and say like, I'm a success. That guy doesn't want to live near it. That guy will never ever want to live next to one. And you also are putting a standard up against immigrants, while also not putting that standard up against people who are in HMOs, right? You should have that same standard and be like, oh, okay, you know what, HMOs are appropriate next to the business that these people work at, or like in a student area, or in a new build area there where there's no established community. Fine, no problem. But if you actually want to destroy an established one, when people start moving out, you don't move back in another family or whatever who want to plant roots. Nah. You split it into bits and then put a transient population in there, right? It's the most moronic thing that you could ever think of. But if you are a property developer, all you give a stuff about is making money. Anyway, guys, that's enough on that rant. Got to get to work, and I'll see you again next time.